What's up guys, today we're going to be modeling a perfume bottle, specifically this one. So we're going to start by finding some reference images. So this one is actually pretty good for a front view. It's also nice to get a side view, but it seems like I can't really find any. Another thing you can do if you want to find some actual photos that people took instead of like product presentation photos is just type in Reddit. In this case, it seems like I can't really find any side view images, which is a shame. So I'm going to grab this one. And what I would also like to get is some more detailed images. So close-ups, for example, this little imprint here would be nice to have a more detailed image of it. So again, having some trouble finding close-ups, but it's kind of hard to see the depth of it. So I guess we'll just have to eyeball it. And I also found this one, which is not very good quality, but it does let us see the inside of the cap, which we are also going to be modeling just in case we want to make any animations with the product where the cap comes off. All right, so we got our reference images. It's not much, you know, I would like to have a few more, but unfortunately we can't really find any. So we're just going to have to do with these. So let's open up Blender. All right, so I'm going to start by going into front view by pressing 1 on my numpad and then image reference. And here it is. Now we're going to need to work in real scale, which means we need to find out how big this thing is. All right, so I found the Amazon page for this perfume, 100 milliliters, perfect. And there's the dimensions. So I'm just going to copy those by adding a cube. And then in item, let's go ahead and type those in. And it's tiny, so let's scale down our image and push it back a little bit, back to front view, and let's align it. All right, that looks pretty good. So since this is quite a rounded shape, we're going to be using subdivision modeling for this. So let's go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier to this. Quickest way to do it is to just select your object and press Ctrl 2. And that puts us at level 2. Let's shade it smooth. Actually, let's go Ctrl 4, get more resolution. And I'm going to start by adding a loop cut near the bottom here to give it that kind of squared off shape. And then move this here down. All right, so let's have a look at the bottle. So you can see there's two different parts here. The glass part and then a kind of shiny plastic up here. Now you could just model these as two separate parts and just like cut them off right here. That could work. But if you look at the perfume from under like this, then you would see that the glass is just closed and it wouldn't look that realistic. So I want to try and model this as closely as possible to how it is in real life, which means we're going to need to make the glass come up under here, all the way up here, and then model this part on top of it. So let's get started. I'm going to add another loop cut around the middle and scale it on the x-axis to line up, and then scale those. Now it does get a little bit hard to see where our model is with the image as a background. So what I can do is come here and decrease the opacity. And that should make it, let's go down even more, a little bit easier to see, right? Now it's still kind of hard to see, so I can change the matte cap and go for this one. Now we can really see. All right, and I'm also going to turn off the grid. There we go, nice and clean. So let's try to get the shape down here correct. Always making sure I'm in X-ray mode. Actually, let's move this out the way. That way when I select like this, I make sure I have everything selected. Otherwise, it's just going to select the front two, and that's not what we want. Let's bring it down a little bit more. Just playing around with the positioning and sizing of these loop cuts until it more or less lines up. It's not going to be 100% exact because, I mean, for one, this photo here is taken in perspective, and we are currently in orthographic view, which means it's not going to line up perfectly, but good enough for me. All right, let's try to match the curve of the glass here. You can see as well, looks pretty good here on this side. It's kind of coming out a little bit. Now that happens, you know. It's not that big a deal, I think. Let's try to get as close as we can, and yeah, good enough. I also want to have somewhat of a realistic approach to this, in the sense that if you're doing work like this for a client, you're not going to have like 3 weeks to make your model, right? So you do want to go somewhat quickly. Of course, take your time to make sure it's as good as you can make it, but you also need to move somewhat fast. All right, so I think that looks pretty good for the bottom half of the bottle here. Let's bring this back up. Whoops. Yeah, not too bad. Let's look at it from the side. Maybe a little bit squared off. Now for the side view, we're gonna worry about it later. Let's just keep going with this. All right, so how the hell do you make this lip here? I'm gonna start by adjusting my model, so it fits to the lip, and then I'm gonna be extruding out and keep working from there. So let's try to match up the lip, which means we do need to add a loop cut in the middle. That way we can select this, move it up, just like that. Now that does mean we get some pretty ugly geometry going on here, but we are going to worry about that later. What we can do now actually is also start using a mirror modifier. So I'm just going to delete all these vertices and add in a mirror. Make sure it's above the subdivision surface, turn on clipping, and we should be good to go. All right, seems like we need, actually what happened there? That's what happened. So you can see when we added a loop cut, it made everything fatter, which means we need to adjust everything real quickly. There we go. Let's add our mirror modifier. Turn on clipping. All right, Let's move this up here. Move these closer so that the edge here is sharper. I think we're gonna need loop cuts somewhere around here. As you can see, that just sharpens up this corner here. Just make sure everything else is still where we want it to be. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, let's zoom in a little bit. Line up as best as we can. That looks pretty good. Move this back up. And now again, it's kind of hard to see. So I'm gonna bump this back up. All right. As you can see, it's not quite where it should be. So let's, oops. All right, that looks pretty good to me. You can see we're not 100% following the line, but it's a very minor difference. Looks pretty good to me. All right, so I'm gonna take this face now and extrude it, right click to cancel the movement, and then move it up. I'm gonna do SZ0 to flatten it out on the Z axis, just like that. And now what I wanna do is add in a loop cut really close to this edge here. Actually, let's go all the way and then move it back up on the Z axis. And now let's select these faces. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna add in a loop cut here, delete these vertices, and boom, activate the Y-axis on our mirror. That way we only have this geometry to work with. So now I'm gonna select these, press Alt-S to move them in along the normal. As you can see, we're starting to get that kind of shape we want, but let's keep adjusting. As you can see, when I did Alt-S, it moved it further inwards on the X-axis than the Y. So I'm just going to select this face, move it in a little bit more, like so. And let's make sure we are still somewhat aligned with our model, which is not the case, unfortunately. Let's take the opacity back down. There we go. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, another problem we're running into is that this line here is much sharper than this one here, which is because this face is yay big and this face is very small, which is pinching due to the subdivision surface modifier. So yeah, how I'm gonna fix this pinching is by selecting this edge right here, just moving it down. So we get about the same softness on both. Just make sure it doesn't mess up our silhouette here. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, and if later we want to come back and make this sharper, we can do it like so, using a crease. So Shift E when selecting edges, or the slider right here, allows you to crease certain edges. Or we could also bevel them right? So more or less cuts in the bevel by scrolling. You can see that makes it sharper as well, but we're gonna worry about that later. For now, let's try to fix this corner up here, which is not very pretty as of right now. Now, to be fair, I think we could leave it like this, right? It wouldn't have that much of an impact. I mean, you'd really have to be looking at it like this, basically, to see this part. And even then, with all the reflections and refractions of glass and the liquid, you couldn't really tell that this corner isn't as sharp as it should be, right? So let's just make sure this part looks good. All right, another thing I'm going to do actually is right here, go to image editor, and open up our reference. There we go. Same thing here. And let's open up this one maybe. No, let's do the other one. Like so. It's not the same size of bottle, but we can still gain some information, mostly about how sharp this edge here is, how much it goes inwards, that kind of stuff. All right. Now again, I'm doing this model for the first time in real time, so you'll excuse me if I'm not burning through the steps as quickly as you may be used to seeing in tutorials. For this one, I chose to do it in real time so you guys could see what the process looks like for me, right? All right, now I'm seeing some misalignment right here between these two vertices, and I want them to be perfectly aligned. So I'm going to select the back one. There we go. Essentially, I want it to be right here, but I'm going to use snapping. So let's press Control-Shift-Tab, select vertex. There we go. Now I'm going to move it, and when I press Control, it's going to snap. As you can see, that actually worked because we have clipping on our mirror right here. I can't actually move it along the y-axis. But if I didn't have it on and I snapped it to this vertex, it would also move on the y-axis. So to avoid that, just press G and then Shift Y, and boom, there we go. Let's do the same thing here. Seems like they actually are aligned. Nice. All right, now I'm not a big fan of this slope here. So let's move this back up a little bit to make it sharper. And let's move this in a little bit more. And actually, I'm going to be adding another loop cut here. Same thing. Move it down all the way, and then GZ. So it's not skewed, right? I don't want it to be skewed like this. I want it to follow the line under it. All right, let's move that in. As you can see, that made this corner here sharper, whereas it used to be very smooth. Just like so. Now it does look a little bit weird like this, but keep in mind, this seam right here is not going to be visible. It's going to be covered by the plastic cap here. All right, I'm gonna change it back to this so we can see the image a little bit better. And what I'm gonna do is move this further inwards because we want our plastic to be overlapping here, right? Something like that. And you know what? That looks pretty good. Let's have a look at the side view. Got some vertices that aren't aligned to this one. So let's do the same thing, G and then Shift X and Control to snap it. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Let's just make sure we're still aligned on the rest of the bottle. Let's go back to this one. And yeah, some very slight difference here. I think that's fine. I'm also going to try to compare it with the original image. And here I'm not trying to align perfectly to the image, but just see if the overall feel of the bottle is correct. Right? So this one, I say maybe looks a little more plump, right? Comes down here and then back in. Whereas this one, not so much. Well, just a little bit. Especially on this side. Let's just smooth this out ever so slightly. Get a little bit plumper, right? Very subtle, but makes a difference. All right, now as for the bottom, if we keep in mind that this is in perspective view, which means in orthographic, the bottom wouldn't look exactly like this. In fact, it would probably look more sharp, right? Sharper. Because, I mean, to exaggerate, if this photo is taken in perspective, something like this, you see it looks very smooth, but once I go into orthographic, it gets sharper, which means we need to make this even sharper, I think. And also, if you think about it, this doesn't seem very flat, right? You would have this sitting on a table. It doesn't seem very stable, right? It's too rounded. So let's bring it down a little bit more. Something like this looks better to me, right? That's pretty good. Now, front view, pretty good. I think we're basically there. Side view, I'm not sure. I think it looks very straight right now. I think it should be more curved. And perspective view, not great, because these corners here look very sharp. And this bottle seems very round when you go around it, right? Let's go to top view. I think it should be way more like this, right? If I exaggerate. So what I'm gonna do is grab a bottle that I have, which is not the exact same perfume, but the same bottle shape. So let me go do that. All right, so here's the side view picture I took. As you can see, it's definitely more curved than currently. It seems like the biggest point from the front view and side view is about right here. It goes down, goes down. Here's the bottom view and top view. So as you can see, definitely way more of an oval shape than what we have going on right here. So let me bring in this picture here. Reference. And this one, scale it way down. And let's try to align it. I'm going to scale from the 3D cursor. Try to line it up. And we've got something weird going on. If I line up the length here, the width is way too fat. Alright, so I'm going to move this down for now. Let's import the side view. Very approximate here. And let's rotate it by 90 degrees, move it over. So yeah, I think our measurements from Amazon may be a little bit weird. All right, let's forget about those. We're pretty nicely lined up with our image here. And let's line up as best as we can right here. So I'm gonna make everything thinner. GY, just like so. Actually, let me grab some measurements from my bottle. All right, so this cube right here is the measurements I got from my bottle. So I scale it up to match our reference image. That lines up nicely. And yeah, that also lines up nicely. So it seems like we're pretty good. All right, this is more like it. Let's go to top view. Make sure we are aligned, more or less. And bring this in till we get that shape we're looking for. Smooth this out. All right, that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit too angular. Just make sure we're still doing fine right here. Bring it out a little bit more. That looks pretty good from the side view. Let's try to follow the curve of the bottle here. Maybe not as extreme. Just want to get the general feel of it right. Again, if you have a client that wants a incredibly precise incredibly precise model, what you probably should do is do a 3D scan of it and then use that to align your model. Now you can do a 3D scan with your phone, right? You don't need very expensive equipment, although it certainly helps. You would also struggle a little bit with reflective surfaces like this, potentially. You can buy some spray that's made specifically for that use, which puts a matte coating over any shiny metallic glass surfaces. But in this case, I'm more or less gonna eyeball everything until it just feels right. So I'm pretty happy with this front view. Side view, no, it's definitely too top heavy. So I'm gonna bring this out more, and I want this to be the fattest part. Maybe bring it down a little bit. Something like this. Let's see, that looks better. Still too far out on the bottom here. Yeah, that's pretty good. We're getting there. If we go back to the top view, it feels a little bit too angular, right? Let me draw here. It feels, whoops, I can't see. A little bit too much like this shape, which I do not know the name of. And I want it to be smoother, right? Rather than like this, which is currently what I feel like is doing. So let's just keep adjusting And little by little, we will get there. Just have to trust the process, essentially. Okay, looks pretty good to me. Let's do one final pass. Make sure we are aligned with the reference image here. Looks good to me. Side view, I'm not going to use this image because there's way too much perspective distortion on it, but I took this with my phone. It doesn't do ultra large focal lengths, which means you get quite a bit of fisheye effect. So let's get rid of this and do it by feel, by eye. This out a little bit more. Still feel like it should get thinner near the top and wider at the base. Something like this. That looks pretty good to me. That looks pretty good to me. And so does this. All right. Nice. Got a solid start to our model here. So what now? Now what I'm going to do is think about what else I'm going to have on this piece right here, the glass piece. So obviously we're going to need a hole of some kind. And I want to figure out how that works. So I think what I'm going to do is try to pry apart the bottle that I have to see how it's made underneath. So let me go do that. All right, mission unsuccessful. I didn't manage to get the little plastic part off. So what I'm going to do is essentially a mix of eyeballing it and doing whatever I feel like doing. So how do we make a hole here? I'm going to set my cursor right here, go to top view and add a circle. Let's align it, align it to the view, make it way smaller. There it is, something like this, looks pretty good. Let's do it 16 or actually 8 vertices, like so. And then delete these that we don't need. And would you look at that? It lines up perfectly. Let's delete this. Fill these in, fill these in. There we go. That's pretty easy, huh? It's not always that easy, unfortunately, but this works just fine. Right? Just want a hole so that for the reflections and refractions, who knows, it may make a little bit of a difference. We'll see. Maybe not, but it was pretty quick, so it's fine. All right. Final adjustments, maybe. Move this out a little bit more. Move this in a little bit more. That looks pretty good. I've got some wonky stuff going on here. Yep, this is too far apart compared to this, feels like. Just move it back in. Okay, nice. That's good to me. Okay, so let's finish this glass part. As you can see, it gets real thick near the bottom. Now, I'm not too sure what's going on here. It seems like it comes down here and then Opens it back up, but I feel like that's probably just the light playing tricks on us. What likely happens, it just comes out. Well, I can't talk. What is probably going on is it just comes down smoothly across and comes back up. Even if that's not the case, I think it would look a lot better like this. So that's how I'm gonna model it. All right. So if you want to give thickness to the glass, you could. Let's smooth this back out. What you could do is just come here, add a solidify, and boom, thickness. But that gives us a uniform thickness, which is not what we want, obviously. Actually, let's use a solidify. Let's add it. Make sure it's going in the right direction. Yep, going inwards. Let's make sure our normals are correct. Perfect. And what thickness do we want here, right? Well, let's look it up. What is the thickness of a perfume bottle? Can I type, please? Okay. Let's have a look. Okay, awesome. 1.5. Okay. This one looks pretty thick. Depth. It doesn't give us a value though. Unfortunate. These also look pretty thick. Now the problem is thickness and reflections and refractions can be quite tricky to the eye, right? You can have a thick glass and then in 3D at least, when you add in your liquid, it feels like that thickness disappears, right? Now, if you look in the photos, it almost feels like there's no thickness up until the bottom. Also, by the way, here's confirmation of my theory that it's actually smooth. It doesn't have this little dip in the middle. This is a pretty good photo. Okay, so it has some thickness on the sides. Not sure how much. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of eyeball it. Something like this. For now, we can always change it later. And now what I want to do is apply this modifier, which fucks everything up. So what we could do is apply the mirror, apply the subdivision, and then apply the solidify, or we could try moving it before. That's not great. I want this to stay as it is. So let's not do that. Just come in here, select all the faces. What is it? Shift D to duplicate them. And then Alt S to scale them along their normals, which does what we want it to do, right? So let's go in here. Let's go maybe yay thick. Looks pretty good to me. And then Shift H to hide everything else. So this is our interior. And so we want it to have invert normals, just like so. And let's work on the bottom. So I'm going to select these first off and move them up to more or less align with this line here. This needs to come up a little bit as well. And then now it's just a matter of, let's see. these vertices, move them up like so. Move this one up, something like this, something like this. All right, looks pretty good. Yeah, I think we got it. It's not perfect, but does the job. Maybe let's try to make the bottom a little bit flatter here. Something like this. Nice. All right, looks good to me. So we've got an interior for our bottle, and now we need to join up both parts at the opening here. Just select these, F, F, there we go. Maybe add a little cut here to give that circle its shape back. Boom, just like that. All right, so let's have a look if this works. So I'm gonna add a material. Let's go with glass. I'm gonna press A to select a specular material, no roughness, and go to render view. Now I am using the Octane version of Blender. And you know what? That looks pretty good. Solid. All right, nice. I'm happy with that. I'm not seeing any pinch points, distortion, or unwanted distortion. Man, that's cool. Look at how the lines cross here. That's really nice. Yeah. I think this part is done. Cool. Let's move on to the rest. Let's do the plastic part here. By the way, I just noticed in this photo, it doesn't have the little tube that comes down. Right? Can't really see it. There's supposed to be a tube. Yeah, like this. Where is that? Did they just edit it out? That's weird. Oh. In this one we can see it. Barely, but we can see it. So here I guess they just... yeah. Took it out in Photoshop. That's interesting. Man, never noticed that. We can... okay, we can't see it here. We can barely see it here. Anyways, we'll worry about that later. Whether we model it or not, we will see. Probably not, right? I guess it looks better without it. Alright, let's keep going. So, to make this plastic part here, now it's going to need to have thickness, right? Because we want the rounding here. So I think I'm going to start by, first off, let me hide the interior. So I'm going to select these faces, hide them, and then select an interior face, press L. Let's call that interior. Just to make it easier to select later, I made a vertex group out of them, and now we only have the outer shell. Perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do is copy this and this and this, right? All this, duplicate it, separate it, and there we go. Now we can call this glass and hide it, and let's call this how do we call this? Cover, I guess, because this is the cap. Cover's pretty good. And let's get rid of these vertices. And I wonder if we just take all this, take these edges and extrude them up. Does that give us the shape we want? More or less. You know what? It kind of works. ish. It's gonna need some tweaking though. Not too bad. Now my normals are backwards. Yep. Let's fix that. Alright. So I want to take these and let's probably snap them to the other ones. And now let's see. Hide these faces. Now I can select this. Oh, that didn't work. Hide these vertices. Now I can select this. Press Alt S to move them out a little bit. And then Alt H to show everything again. And yeah, now they're aligned, but separated. Okay, not too bad. I feel like this is too smooth. We probably want to add a loop cut right here. Something like that, right? Let's see how it looks. Okay, well, first off, let's actually focus on the top here. So let's select these, the inside ones. Move them down a little bit. And then select these. And extrude. Move them in. Let's actually just align them to the other ones. So G Shift Z. G Shift Z. There we go. That looks better. And now if we just add a loop cut here, yeah, we're getting a shape we want. Nice. More or less. More or less. Let's select all of this and move it back down. But if you're wondering how I can max out a window, it's control space. Very useful. Now, I wish they did a version where you kept these two windows, right? But anyways, let's take all these in SZ0 actually. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's take all of these. Yep, SZ0, just nice and flat. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, seems like it's coming down. Actually, on my version, it's flat. So let's keep it flat. Yeah, that's supposed to be flat. Just a perspective messing with us. And let's take these two and slide them up a little bit more. You know what? That is pretty darn good. Let's take this one and slide it down. We want to have about the same roundness here as here. Actually, I think this looks fine. Let me check on mine. Yeah, no, it's actually the same, so let's move it down a little bit. Just like that. Looks pretty good. Okay, now let's check the sides. How does it align with our image? Let's go back to matcap. That's not too shabby. And this, I wonder if it's too sharp, not sharp enough. What if I move these back out? No, that's gonna mess it up. What if I add a loop cut? Like so, make it even sharper. That's too sharp. But we might want some sharpness. Let's see. Okay, so here it looks pretty good. I just got a rendered view real quick. Add in a new material, call it, what is it, cover. Let's make it black. And why is it not black? There we go. And it's very smooth, no roughness. Okay. Let's make this darker for now. Oh, transmission is what I want. Something like that to mimic this part here. Okay, here I think it looks pretty nice. Here though, it feels way too bulbous. Let's try and fix that. Also, it feels like it's too square right here. What if we move this up a tiny bit, move this down? That's even worse. Actually, I think it's fine. I'll look at it. On my perfume, it does also have that little bit of flatness here. So I think we're good. But yeah, the front is definitely coming out way too much. So let's just do this, move it back along the y-axis. Make sure we're still lined up pretty good. And I probably want this to come in closer. Or want these to come out more. Let's go back to normal shading. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yep. Not maybe a tiny bit, something like that. Okay, and it might be still a little bit too rounded, so let's sharpen it up, just like so. Nice. And maybe select all this, move it back a little bit more. Same thing here. Move that back just a bit, like so. We do want to have quite a separation here, it seems. Let's actually make this lip come up more. Something like so. Looks pretty good. Maybe a bit too sharp now. Yep. Looking good. Alright, you know what? I'm happy with this. I'm pretty happy with this. Let's maybe add a touch of creasing to this. Right, just make it a little bit more pronounced. A little bit more. I think that looks good. Alright, not too shabby. At all. Now, I am kind of worried now about intersections. Right, like, do we get any? Let me render this, pressing Control B to get a render region, and then Control B again, select just half of it, and now we hide this, and we can compare the difference between the two, right? So obviously it's quite different, but looks fine to me. I don't feel like we're getting any really nasty intersections here. I was worried about this part specifically. I mean, it is kind of hard to tell what is the HDRI and what is the material, but yeah. Because actually we are getting some right here. Wait, I can't see. Let me zoom in on these. Actually, let's do this. Random, there we go. Not quite random enough. Whatever. Oh no, actually we're doing fine. But we are, okay, this is intersecting with our glass. So let's move it up. Actually, let's move all of this up, I think. Right? Something like this. Let's merge these two right here. Actually, let's finish up. I want to select these top 3 vertices right here, right? Extrude them so they line up with the ones under them. So G Shift Z, right? G Shift Z. There we go. Make sure we select the top one. G Shift Z to this vertex, please. And let's do the last one. G Shift Z to this vertex. All right. And now what we can do is select these edges and press F to fill them in, and F again, and there we go. Now we've got a nice lip. Which, now that I think about it, do we actually want to do that? No. No, we don't. Let's undo all that. All right. Let's keep checking for nasty intersections. It's kind of hard to see here. If I take this, for example, yeah, it is intersecting quite a bit. Let's move it out. Okay, it should be better now. That looks good to me. I may have been nitpicking stuff, that doesn't really matter, but you know. Also getting some right here. So let's go to side view. It's like these interior vertices. And yeah, right here, some intersection. There we go, nice and clean. All right, cool. So next up is the cap. So can't really see. Actually, this is not too bad. I'm gonna take a couple more images on my end. Let me just do that. All right, here we go. So I took a few pictures of the top here, which is gonna help us model it. I really like this one because you can see the profile of the different stuff going on there. All right, let's get to it. Okay, and let's import it in here as well. Image reference. There we go. Scale it way down. So it more or less lines up. Let's go back to this. Okay, we've got it. I'm going to move this back and give it some opacity. Let's make sure it's aligned with the reference image. And yeah, that looks pretty good to me. All right. So let's select these vertices here and see, actually just this one, see where it lands. So we need it to be wider. So about here. So let's select these. Actually, let's go with the edges. And if I press Alt S, it doesn't seem to work. So what I'm going to do here, let's move this up a bit, is add a cube, make it very small, line it up right about here. Let's make it bigger on the y-axis. And now this is where I want the lines to line up. So let's add a circle and line it up. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Can't see it anymore. Okay, there we go. This is getting confusing. There we go. Let's go 0.5, 3.5. All right, looks good. And now I can select this circle and move it up to align with these vertices. And again, delete the vertices we don't need. Now let's get rid of these two edges. And connect these like so. All right, there we go. So now I'm ready to actually start working on this. So if I scale from the 3D cursor, which is at the center of our object here, only on, well, excluding the z-axis, you can see I can scale the circle and have it stay a perfect circle, which is exactly what we need. So let's get our reference images back in and start extruding upwards to about this height, and then S Shift Z to bring it in, and then extrude again, right click, S Shift Z, extrude again, right here, and again, scale it, extrude again, scale it in, and let's do a final one to make that lip. All right, so this is way too soft, which means we need to add some loop cuts. So I'm looking at my bottle in my hand right now, and from what I can see, and we can see it in the reference image as well, this is very smooth. This transition here is pretty much seamless. Then we have a bit of a lip here. And then this transition right here is quite sharp with just a little bit of a bevel. And then again, we have quite a sharp transition right here into a smooth lip. So let's select these. And actually, I'm not sure if I want to use creases here. Reason being that I'm going to be sending this model over to Houdini. And as far as I'm aware, other programs other than Blender cannot read creases, which means it's not going to look right. So instead, I'm just going to use bevels and loop cuts. And I believe I did use a crease here, but I will figure that out later. All right. So let's take this edge here and actually add a loop cut right under it like so. And maybe another loop cut, something like this. We do want it to be smooth, but not too smooth. And it also ensures the top is nice and flat right here. You can see it does make quite a change. So this looks pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, maybe a little too sharp. So I'm going to do GG to slide it back down. Nice. Then let's add a loop cut right in here. And that looks pretty good. Nice. And then another loop cut right here. And let's see. All right, seems like we need to move these and this one. Actually, just those two out a little bit. There we go. Let's actually move this one out too. Just like so. Nice. And then select all of these and these two and scale them out. Just like that. All right, and now I'm going to select this outer edge right here and scale it out a little bit more. Same with this one, maybe bring it down a touch. That looks pretty good. All right, nice. And from there, we have a bit of a lip and then go straight back down. So let's model the cap right here first. So I'm gonna copy these, Shift D, and then scale them in a little bit, bring them down. That should be enough. And then extrude upwards. So actually let's press L to select that whole thing we just created. And then scale it in a little bit more. All right, doesn't seem like we've got much of a taper going on. I know it might seem like that from pictures, but when I look at it in real life, it is pretty straight. So that looks good. Select these two, extrude them up, scale it in. And whenever you add a new part, a separate mesh within an object, it always doesn't follow the shading. So just do shade smooth again. All right, now looking at the top, it comes in just a little bit and then it is completely flat. So maybe something like this. Oops. Bring that in. And then something like this, right? To have it nice and flat on the top. Let's see how that looks. We need another loop cut right about here. Now again, press L and scale this whole thing out like so. And let's move this up. This may be a little bit too inwards. It might have been simpler to just do a bevel, but all right, that looks pretty good. Let's fill this in. Let's see, how do I want to do this? I don't think I want a pole here, actually. It might be fine. Just extrude that to center. Fill this in, and yeah, looks good. Not seeing any weird shading going on, so perfect. And I think we are looking pretty good if I compare it to this reference image here. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. All right, nice. It's coming together. Cool. The cap looks pretty good. Actually, you know what? I am gonna do a bevel, so let's just get rid of this and this and this. And select these, move them up to align with these, fill that in. There we go. Just select this and Control B. And our bevel, as you can see, isn't, it's kind of slanted, which means we need to apply the scale. There we go. And now it's still not working. Is it just normal? Let me add a loop cut about here, another one here. It should work now. Yes, that looks a little bit better. Oops. Yeah, that looks about 45 degrees to me. Let's do something like this. Nice. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the hole right here. How am I going to do this? We could model it using a Boolean, or we could just do it using textures. Now, I think in this case, it really depends what you're going to do with the model. If you're going to do an extreme close-up of this, maybe have an animation where a spray comes out or something, that could be cool actually, then it's probably better to model it. It's just going to look more realistic. Or at least I don't think I have quite the texturing abilities to make it look super realistic using only textures. But it's going to be quite a pain in the ass to model. You're going to need a bunch of geometry on this cap here. It's quite close to the edge as well, so you might get some distortion going on. So what I'm going to do is just make it using textures. And now that I think about it, I think we can actually get pretty close, right? Using displacement maps and stuff like that. I think we can get it looking pretty damn good. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. And it seems like all we have left is the cap. All right, now this little emblem here, I'm not going to model it either. That would be a nightmare. Just going to do it using textures. Thankfully, Octane for Blender, well, Octane has a very nice texture displacement mode, which, contrary to Cycles, as far as I'm aware, doesn't require you to subdivide your mesh like crazy, right? In Cycles, if I wanted to have this with a displacement map, I would need to go crazy on the subdivisions. Let's see our density right now. Yeah, I would need way more than this, because it's so small, right? But in Octane, you just slap an image on there, and I mean, your mesh can be like a single plane, right? A single quad, and it's going to look great. So we're going to do that in part 2, where we do the textures. All right, so let's do this cap. Same thing, the logo here, I'm not going to model it, but I think I am going to model these lines here because quite straightforward and simple. And then the top, I don't know if I can, let me see if I can find an image of the top. Nope. Okay, we can kind of see right here. There's also logo in here, which same thing, I'm just going to do using displacement maps, and it's going to turn out great. So let's model this. It's going to be pretty straightforward. Let us add a circle, and I can't see it. Okay, now I can see it. Let us give it more vertices. 16 should be fine. And yeah, let's move it up. And so we want it to come down. Actually, let's hide this image. Make it bigger, right about there. Which means we might want this to be a little bit closer, actually. Let's make the slope a little bit sharper. Scale from the 3D cursor. By the way, to do this, to change where you're scaling from, you can do it up here, or you can press dot and then hold it and select. And then if you hold comma, you can also select the orientation of your transformations. Pretty useful. I use these two a lot, you know. So 3D cursor, S, Shift Z, and let's bring that in a little bit more. Something like that should be good. All right. So select this. Let's move it down to about here. So it's just above the other one. And then go into edit mode and extrude that up. Nice. So I'm going to shade smooth, give it some subdivision. And it seems like the cap, that's weird. Here it almost seems like the cap is rounded, right? But when I look at it in real life, it's nice and straight. So either they're not the same cap, which is possible, or this is just a distortion from the camera. So I'm going to make it straight, since it does seem like that's how it is in real life. Now I am getting, this part is nice and straight, and I'm getting a little bit of curving here, which is actually the same as in the photo. Yeah, I was just hallucinating, I guess. All right, let's get to it. Let's start with this part here. Add in a loop cut right here and right here. Let's make our life easier by hiding everything we don't need. Maybe bring the opacity up a little bit, or all the way. So yeah, we're on a couple loop cuts. And let's scale them up. Scale them up a little bit. All right. And a couple more loop cuts. Scale them inwards, excluding the z-axis. Scale them up a little bit more. Something like that. And now we need to add support loops. Let's add one right here, on the inside. It does seem quite curved. I don't know if we want to do something like this, right? It does seem quite curved. Let me look at it. Yeah, no, it's definitely very curved. So let's remove those. And I think we can maybe add one in the middle and select these, scale them up. Actually, what if we remove that one? So to dissolve an edge loop like this, so Alt-Shift-Click to select it, and then Control-X when you're in edge mode, because if I do this in vertex mode, it doesn't work. All right, so edge mode, Control-X, very useful. And that looks pretty good to me. Now it does look quite thick of a hole, right? Not sure. Looks, yeah, a bit too pronounced maybe. Let's maybe take these again, scale them down on the z-axis. All right. Let's leave it like this for now. Now, as you can see, we're not lining up, so select everything and, oops, S Shift Z, just like that. And now I'm gonna take, let's give us some more space. I'm gonna take all of this, move it down, take all of this, Shift E to duplicate it up here. And then I can just select this edge loop and this one, and then F3 and look for bridge edge loops. Boom. Nice. All right. Now let's extrude this one up. Now the top of the cap, we can see here, does have a slight dome shape. All right, which is going to be kind of a pain in the ass to model actually. But let's see. Extrude up, scale it in, up, scale it in. So this is about the top of the dome, more or less, it seems like. So for now, I'm gonna make it really small and look for grid fill, which is, you can see it's cutting when we zoom in. So go to view, clip start, bring it down. So grid fill, well, fills it in with a grid. Duh. Let's actually offset it so it's nice and even. Now that does cause some shading issues, as you can see, but we'll worry about that later. For now, let's finish working on this curve right here. So I think I need another loop cut right about here. Smooth this one up. Smooth this one outwards, up a bit. That looks pretty good to me. Nice. Let's do the bottom real quick. So very straightforward. It's quite a sharp edge. Just bring it in a little bit and then bring it up. Now we don't need to worry about modeling the inside of the cap, or actually we might. If we do an animation where the cap comes off, we're gonna need this. So let's do that. Now looking at the cap in real life, we've got a kind of double layer thing going on. So I'm first going to select this face loop, bring it in a little bit more. It seems to be about as thick as this is tall. So yeah, we need more thickness. Something like this. Now we want this edge right here to be nice and sharp. So I'm going to bring a loop cut down and one right here. There we go, nice and sharp. Let's do the same thing in here. boom, boom. There we go. Looks good. And now, yeah, so we've got this part. And then I'm just gonna duplicate all of these, scale them in until they practically touch. So let's select the outermost edge loops, and extrude them up. First, just a little bit, and then a little bit more, like so. If you want to see a clear picture of what's going on, actually, let me disable it in edit mode. This is what's going on. You can see we've got our support loops here and here. Let's turn that back on. Now I'm going to press L to select this whole part and then scale it until it's practically closing the gap, just like that. Now let's make it a little bit thicker. Whoops. There we go. Scale that in. That looks pretty good to me. And so what it does next is just goes up a little bit, and then inwards, and then up, and then kind of closes off. So let's do that real quick. Comes up until about, whoops, about right here, something like that, from what I can tell. There we go. Actually, let's go back to flat mode. And then comes in a little bit, and then goes back up until more or less the top. Something like this, probably. And then there's a bevel, and then it closes off. So it's not a 45-degree bevel. It's more something like this, right? How does that look? A bit thicker, it seems. Scale it down a little bit more. That looks good. Extrude it, scale, and grid fill. I just like to make sure it's nice and aligned, just like so. There we go. All right, let's turn our subdivision back on. And now we need sharp creases all around. So support loops everywhere. Nice. Let's do the same thing here. It is getting kind of hard to see. All right, I've located where I need them. Right here, here, and here. Nice. That is pretty much how it looks. Maybe bring it in a little bit higher, actually. Everything on this plane. So it's just like this. And this. Move it up. Oh, I forgot. You know what? I'm just going to leave it. It's not a big deal. I'm once again obsessing over details that really don't matter, you know. Okay. Now let's finish the top of this dome. Let's make it more domey. Something like this. Looks pretty good. And we're still getting, it's kind of hard to see, but maybe if I change the matte cap here. So yeah, you can see the pinching here. Quite ugly. This is annoying. It's always annoying to work on domes and stuff like that. I could try to make them a point, so if I select merge at center, but now I get even more shading artifacts. I could try to, oops. Actually, let's add a couple more loop cuts, or just one right here. And then select these, merge at center. You can see that makes the shading artifacts smaller. But even if I scale it way down, now we start getting more extreme pinching, right? So it's kind of, there's no good solution here. So how am I going to do this? Another thing I could do is take this grid fill part and make it bigger, but we're still getting some distortions, right? And if I add in a support loop right around it, even more. No good. So to be honest, I'm gonna have to do some research on topology. And I will be right back. All right, I have figured it out. I knew about this trick, but I completely forgot about it. So what we're gonna do is add a cube, subdivide it to level 2, apply that, go to edit mode, select everything, and look up to sphere, right? So this is gonna take your cube, well, cubic sphere, and make it a perfect sphere, right? So to sphere, press 1, click, all right. And so let's scale that down. Let's see if it fits up in terms of the amount of vertices. So we've got, let me turn on statistics. Right here, we've got 16, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna take this, delete all of these, and now, whoops, it's a matter of lining it up. As best I can with these vertices. Something like that. I'm gonna select this mesh we just made. Let's go back to a normal matcap. This thing we just made, and then shift select our cap and press Ctrl J. There we go. And now let's select this and line it up how we want. So I'm gonna snap it right here if I can. There we go. And then set the, let's shift H it real quick, set the cursor right here. Oops. All right. And now, if we scale from the cursor, we can bring it up until it lines up as best we can, just like that. All right, so let's hide this and then select all this and this, get rid of it, select this, get rid of it, and then unhide. Now, as we can see, we have a dome with no shading issues, right? Or maybe very slight ones, but not quite noticeable. You can see it kind of does distort the light around here, which is where the poles are. If we check right here, right? But that's very subtle. I mean, yeah, I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to first off check my normals. We're doing good. And then join all of these, which are not quite aligned, but we can do it by hand. So I'm gonna select this, make sure we have auto merge on, and then just boop. Oh, that didn't work. Boop, that didn't work. So let's go to options and make that smaller. Let's divide by 10. And now, yeah, it works. Getting some pinching, but that's all right. Actually, before we do that, I'm gonna select this dome we just made, deselect everything apart from the bottom ones here, and move them up slightly. That way we can actually select them. And now we get to merging. Boom. If it wants to work. There we go. There we go. And look at that. Easy. Let's see it in rendered view. Let's give it that cover material. And yeah, I mean, I can't see the shading issues. That's how small they are. So I'm pretty happy with that. So let's just make sure our shape is nice and lined up. Let's go back to this one. Oops, actually this one. And turn down the opacity. All right. Looking pretty good. Okay, it's maybe a little bit too... Let's bring this down. Yeah. Nice. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job here. Let's check the top view. Did we have a top view? We did. And yep, seems like the cap is actually maybe a little bit bigger in the photo, but remember lens distortion and all that. We can probably make this a tad bigger, just like that. All right, pretty nice. I think we are done with the modeling. Let's just make sure. One final pass. Yep, just checking the model in real life as well. Always helps. These ridges may be a little bit too strong, but we can always adjust it later when we do the materials and shading. If we think they look out of place, we can fix it up real quick. And yeah, all right, so this is it for the modeling. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys enjoyed the kind of real-time approach I took to it. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing or boring to watch. Let me know what you thought about it. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them in the comments. And yeah, see you for part 2 when we do the shading.